We gather on land known as Indakina to the Nulhegan Abenaki tribe. This has also been home to herds of moose, and the hills of Musalamu are named after them. During the moose moon, may we consider the Abenaki, the moose, our animal relations, and all the diverse people around us, and wonder, do all have what they need? If not, let us work together. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Strum. I'm a member of this congregation and of the worship team. And this morning, I have the great pleasure of serving as worship associate for Tom Morgan. Tom is in his 10th month of a hybrid part-time ministerial internship here in our community of communities. Through his UU value-focused justice ministry, Tom has been expanding our awareness, direct care for the marginalized members of our community, partnerships and collaborations and opportunities to serve and advocate for the oppressed. In these last winter and spring months of his internship, Tom's internship will focus on working with other faith-based ministry innovators and our community to explore the viability of a Unitarian Universalist justice ministry here in Vermont. Today, he will ask us to consider what stories we take with us and whether our faith can help us choose and find meaning for the future. So welcome to all of you here in our sanctuary, to those on Zoom, and to those who may watch this service online at a later date. Welcome to CVUUS, the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. You are welcome here, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You are welcome to join us in community as we learn, live, and love together. If this is your first time, you are invited to fill out one of these blue cards that you can find in the lobby, and you'll receive our monthly newsletter and weekly email blast. There are also pink cards if anybody has a personal need or concern that you would like to share with only our caring committee. And if anyone has a joy or a concern or a milestone or a passage that you'd like to share with the entire congregation out loud this morning, fill out one of these and put it in the basket when we take up the offering. If anybody needs hearing assistance, we have some great headsets that you can get from Abby in the back. If you haven't already done so, please put those cell phones in worship mode. So now, while Amaya comes up to light our chalice, when she's lighting it, if you'll join me we light this chalice to welcome the unifying and universalizing light of love. May this flame illuminate our way to the liberation and transformation of ourselves and the world.
Our call to worship today, come gather to build, is by the Yaqui Nation member and UU minister of faith formation, Kia Bordner. Come together again, gather in love, light the fire of hope, build the foundation, commit together again. Gather in truth, light the fire of freedom, build the entryways, continue together again. Gather in community, light the fire of the future, build the shelter. Now please rise in body or spirit to sing Bright These Jewels, hymn number 132 in the gray hymnal.
Good morning, everybody. Since I'm still relatively new at this, I'm going to introduce myself again. I am Julia, and I'm your new acting RE coordinator. And I'm going to share a story with you today. But before I do that, I'm going to invite up Jess Rouse, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience in religious exploration.
Good morning. As Julia said, my name is Jessica Rouse, and I attend services here. You may be like, what the heck? I have never seen her here before, because I actually do spend most of my time over with the kids in the Finn House. So 9 years ago, my family found ourselves needing a new spiritual home. And so we visited different congregations every Sunday for a year. And I brought the kids with me to them, and they were like, this is where we should be. And here we are, still. And so for a year, I came to services and I sat down and I sang my children out and I stood for the hymns and I listened to the sermons. And at the end of the year, my children said to me, Mommy, you're not just going to sit there, right? Church is a verb. What are you going to do? And I realized that they had never seen me sit in church. I was always going to church, which is why they thought church was a verb, for meetings and board meetings and trustee meetings and teaching Sunday school and things like that. So that was a new experience for them. And that same day, Poppy said, hey, stood up here and was like, hey, we need people to teach over in religious exploration. And my kids were super excited and they were like, look, you could be teaching Sunday school again. And so that is how I started. And so you have the opportunity to make church a verb. and figure out how you want to be involved with the smaller humans of our church. And it doesn't have to look like the way that I do it. You can come volunteer as an assistant once a month, where you don't have to do any thinking. You just have to show up. You could have some kind of passion that you would love to share with people once during a summer RE program. You could say, gosh, I am really not down with smaller humans, but I like the mid-sized version. We have this amazing group of middle schoolers who would love to have programs specifically for them even once a month. And we're looking for leaders for that. So just know there are all kinds of ways to get involved with RE, and we would love to have you.
Thank you so much, Jess. She is like absolutely amazing. And it is also absolutely amazing just to hang out with smaller humans. I'm just going to say it can also be a way for you to expand and grow in your religious exploration, because it's exploration, right? Not education. And it happens your whole life. So with that, I'm going to move on to our book for today. It has been a week, and there are a lot of big feelings that people might be having about this week. So I have heard that one of the best ways to help ourselves and help our world is to focus on our local community. And we are a community here. We are many communities, and we are part of communities. And so my book today is from this amazing series by Susan Verde with art by Peter Reynolds, and it's I Am We, a book of community. I know it is important to take care of me, to focus on my own breath, my own needs, to be kind to my mind. Sometimes I wonder, is that selfish? How does caring for myself help anyone else? But then I realize that the better I feel inside, the more I can be there for others, my friends, my family, my community, because I do not exist alone. I am part of something bigger than myself. And when we each take the goodness and self-compassion inside and turn it outward, that is how we make progress and change, how we build, create, learn, and show love. How we care for each other affects the world. I am more than me. I am we. When there are challenges and struggles, I can check on you. You can check on me. We can create a safety net so no one falls. When there is hurtfulness and inequity, we can stand up for each other. We can sit, gather, march, sing, vote, stronger in numbers, louder in voices as we call for justice. When there are differences in thoughts and opinions, we can have a conversation, listening, disagreeing, and agreeing with gentleness, finding the right solution for all of us. When there is shyness and a feeling of not belonging, we can be the welcoming committee, interested and thoughtful, making sure there is a place for everyone. When there are problems to be solved with creativity, I can share my talents and you can share yours. We can combine our skills and ideas to dream up something spectacular. When there are good times, successes, and joy, we can celebrate, show our excitement and pride, and encourage each other to keep on rising. Connection is how I grow. Connection is how we grow. Connected is what we are, part of a worldwide community, diverse and magnificent, kind and accepting, supporting and present. All of us important, none of us alone. I am not just me, I am we. And if we put our heads and our hearts together, if we keep on caring for ourselves and each other, everything is possible. I think this is a beautiful guide to our Unitarian Universalist faith and how we practice it. And so, as we sing the children out, I wonder how you can build community more in your life and in our congregation.
There are many ways to connect here at CVUUS in addition to Sunday services. Check out the tables downstairs this morning during social hour for Community of Communities. Also, today, join us from 1 to 3 for our inaugural Foster Family Circles. Come and share reflections on foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And there will be a congregational luncheon on Sunday, February 9th after the service. That is the day we kick off our annual Stewardship Plus Drive. The stewardship team needs your help. They need at least 12 people to bring a dish featuring your favorite root vegetable, raw or cooked. Carrots, parsnips, potatoes, onions, beets, sweet potatoes, turnips, ginger, garlic, turmeric, rutabaga, fennel. Just combine those two. They also need 4 people to make a carrot cake that is at least 13 by 9. You can sign up with Ellen Flight or Alan Moore. And the mystery, there's Ellen is here. Alan, I'm sure, is here. There he is. And the mystery of the root vegetables will be unveiled and made clear to everyone very soon.
We have come to that time in our service when we acknowledge with our donations the work of justice and our community of communities. This month, we are donating to the Rutland chapter of the NAACP, an organization fighting to make sure that Vermont's motto of freedom and unity is manifest in the lives of all of our neighbors. Please give as generously as you are able.
I have one yellow card this morning. It's from Marnie Wood, and she shares with us that there was a beautiful wedding here yesterday. Please join me in extending our best wishes to our own Catherine Jakubowski and Johnny Carter. The abundance of gorgeous tulips are a blessing from them this morning. How lovely. And another milestone is that today is the 39th birthday of CVUUS this month. Happy birthday.
It has been a week of stories and experiences. So let's just take a moment just to be still in the mystery and community of this time and place.
This reading, Our Transformation, is from Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists, Blue Notes, an anthology of love, justice, and liberation. Mainstream faith sells the idea that it's perfectly fine to come here exactly as you are, never changing anything. What we are saying as Black UUs is that this faith calls us to the kind of transformation that the work of faith demands. That is to say, that being in community requires that we are open to making sacrifices, getting uncomfortable, existing differently, communicating differently, and loving more fully and deeply in a world that situates us as accomplices to systems of oppression. It matters that we are being transformed in the service of the work. And we believe in the capacity of ourselves and each other to grow, change, and shift toward ever increasing frameworks of love and justice. This faith does not belong to us, nor does it belong to anyone else. And yet we have a responsibility to Unitarian Universalists and to Black people to help bring it to life and give it some shape that we can live and lean into, not just for our own sakes, but also for the sakes of all who have not arrived yet, and to help us change the world.
Well, good morning. Here we are starting the last week of January 2025 and the actual birthday of Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. It's hard to believe how fast time flies, isn't it? And what a year 2024 was for this congregation, for Vermont, for our country, for our world. Certainly the political story of 2024 demonstrated how divided America is. Too many beloveds are the targets of hate and even further marginalization than they were before. Like many of you, I've been thinking about the stories of 2024 happening in our families, happening in our neighbors' families, and in our community of communities. As I've been thinking about experiences of the last year, I've been thinking about relationships, faith, and the future. I imagine you too have been considering the meaning we fold into ourselves as we move forward. January's worship theme here at CVUUS has been story. February's worship theme will be inclusion. So this last Sunday of January, today's reflection is entitled From Story to Inclusion. In a way, it's a strange title for a religious reflection. Next slide, please. The story of institutional religion has rarely been a story of inclusion. Earlier this month, while preaching on the topic of co-creation, Reverend Christina mentioned that the creation story of the Hebrew and Christian Bibles is actually a spin on the Babylonian creation story, the Enuma Elish. It's a powerful story that was used by leaders to establish an exclusive hierarchy of control that centered the lives of the privileged and elites. Perhaps a model for oligarchies at the national level. Back then, the elites used that story to justify Babylonia's rule of Mesopotamia for 2,000 years. Leaders and elite cliques have used stories to exclude or cancel people they viewed as other throughout time. It happened in Canaan and ancient Israel. In the 3rd and 4th centuries of the Christian church, elites threw entire communities that valued the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth out of sanctuaries and communities. Too many systems have been constructed to hush the stories of the marginalized and exclude the inherently worthy from their just and equitable place. Understanding our purpose, discerning meaning in this astonishingly beautiful plurality of creation, and choosing to be inclusive have been a critical part of the conversations in our Unitarian and Universalist traditions since the beginning. Choosing to believe in the unifying power of love and choosing to believe that every person carries that love's light puts us at odds with powers more self-interested and control. In the Christian tradition, those powers declared our forebears to be heretics, from the word heresies, which means choice. Choosing love and radical inclusion is at the root of who we are. That is why I called the second part of this sermon, this reflection, the power of faith. Next slide, please. On November 6th, the day after the election, our UU Association president, the Reverend Sophia Betancourt, reminded us that, quote, While we cannot know everything that will happen in the future, we know that we are a sanctuary people, unquote. Reverend Sophia said in her holiday message in December that this is a time to reassess our commitments, to deepen our engagement with our values, and to move forward together in new ways. How does this conversation between the meaning we discern from stories and the collective purpose of our Unitarian Universalist faith help us do that? Help us to reassess our commitments and choose what and who we take with us into the future. As Unitarian Universalists, how inclusive will we be? Will we grow in love, creating new connections, adapting and welcoming difference? Or will we curl into the comfortable status quo and interrogate the diversity of stories, ideas, and people that come our way to determine their sameness to us, and at best try to assimilate that difference into our sameness? In this morning's reading, Black UUs reminded us that mainstream faith sells us the idea of the status quo. But this faith, Unitarian Universalism, calls us to be the kind of transformation that the work of faith demands, transformation that will be open, inclusive to others, to live the values of our faith and willing to make sacrifices. Imagine the humility and generosity it takes for Black UU leaders, sages of embodied stories of the cost of racism and oppression, to be willing to try to teach white people that our co-liberation depends on our willingness to sometimes take risks and be uncomfortable. Next slide, please. A few weeks after November's election, I had the opportunity to listen to the stories of other communities around the country. It was the National Faith in Action Conference in Washington, D.C., an annual gathering of justice-focused leaders from across the religious spectrum. I was a representative of the Vermont Interfaith Action Network. BIPOC, non-English speaking, economically disadvantaged, and queer faith leaders rose to speak about their communities and about love and about fear. This setting did not allow for the dominant culture to be comfortable. They talked about the real fears of systems that already target them with incarceration, deportation, and physical brutalization. Elders reminded us that it is always the disenfranchised that pay the price for our political division. That the status quo was built by the slave master's tools with the colonizer's power. They spoke prophetically about the need for transformation, the need of a recognition that our interdependence, for us to understand that if you're going to claim to respect the inherent dignity of every person, you don't get to subordinate the needs of the marginalized to the needs of the privileged. They asked what our faith required of us in this moment. Someone said, we need to be better allies. A Muslim imam from Michigan sitting at our table leaned over to a rabbi from Philadelphia and said, no, we need accomplices. Folks willing to sacrifice, create new relationships, and conspire to bring about change. To be present with these beloveds physically in a room and just listen for hours, centering them and their marginalization was sacred. And afterwards, in the evening, we spent time building individual relationships in faith. This was a ministry space of social justice. It was on that cold December day, a sanctuary of inclusion. For all its beautiful differences, it was a gathering of like-hearted people. Next slide, please. As he spoke to the threats to communities, Bishop Dwayne Royster, Faith in Action's executive director, said this, quote, everything we've done so far has gotten us to where we are. The status quo is killing our people and terrorizing our communities. Old agendas that comfort the privileged and their elite cliques, their pay-to-play systems, their charity are not helping us. While our Black children are going to prison and our brown children are being deported, we will no longer depend on congregations who claim a liberal religious tradition, but fail to liberate the marginalized. The time has come to call out everything that excludes and call in everything that transcends and love and includes, unquote. At the end of the conference, a Mayan shaman rose and told a story about relationships and how faith in her culture helps it adapt and engage, even in a status quo that has tried to disenfranchise her people. She left us with this blessing. May we all rise up and leave no one behind. May we all rise up and leave no one behind. Adapting and more deeply engaging was an important part of the Unitarian Universalist story in 2024, right? Next slide, please. At our General Assembly last June, we voted to instantiate our values of interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice into the bylaws, the living chapter, the living charter of our association. With all the other news of 2024, I wonder whether we really realize the potential mobilizing force of this accomplishment. We shifted from affirming an important set of principles to declaring that Unitarian Universalism acts on our values. And we place them under the clear purpose of engaging in transformation of a world through liberating love. As I look for purpose, and next slide, please. As I look for purpose and meaning and the mobilizing power of our Unitarian Universalist values, like some of you in community, I think about the stories and relationships with different kinds of people. The marginalized in our community of communities, an unhoused member of the Black community, which is 2 to 5 times more likely to be homeless in Vermont than white folks. Impoverished single parents of families, part of the 40% of Vermonters that experienced food insecurity last year. Caregivers with kids who lack supportive relationships. A third of all Vermont teens surveyed last year said they lack even one trusting relationship with an adult. Our homeless rate has increased by over 300% in the last 5 years. Income disparity continues to widen. Healthcare systems are failing, especially for the poor, who are lucky if they can find basic healthcare, and certainly do not have enough access to substance use and mental health care treatment. Vermont is a beautiful place with beautiful people, but we all know the status quo isn't working here either. Next slide. We are a sanctuary people. And yes, we know we have work yet to do. And yet, depending on our choices, our values, and our history suggest Unitarian Universalist may be tailor-made just for moments like this. Marriage equality, climate change, migrant solidarity, and more. CVUUS has demonstrated its progressive values throughout its history. You continue to stand up for justice. Your adoption in 2023 of what was known as the 8th principle, committing to collectively and accountably acting against racism and all forms of oppression, was a key part of that CVUUS story. In March of last year, we held a workshop here, facilitated via Zoom by the co-developer of the 8th principle, Paula Cole-Jones herself. We started exploring how to widen the reach of our sanctuary, to be in relationship with more beloveds beyond the walls of our congregation. The Council of Ministries formed a task force, the Mosaic Task Force, to create a plan to help CVUS widen our welcome and hear the needs of others. The task force is evolving into an expanding leading edge of community-facing members, as well as collective Unitarian Universalist space that is a social justice ministry. Next slide, please. Our leading edge cohort is journeying with other UU congregations, seeking to interculturally grow our sanctuaries into communities of communities with Paula. Today, during social hour, please stop by the Community of Communities table downstairs and the Social Justice Ministry table and ask what the yellow dots on this graphic mean. In the social justice ministry space, leaders of the Edge are working on plans for congregational visioning around the needs of our community and how CVUUS may govern this collective sanctuary people more inclusively. The cohort is expanding to include CVUUS teams and groups, music, the caring network, the welcoming team, and finance to help guide the congregation as we sustain and increase healthy relationships, dismantle whatever processes exclude, and include more love-centric welcoming and inclusion. Next slide, please. All the while, we have expanded opportunities for inter-community connections through other programs. To name just a few, with our partner Turning Point of Addison County, we launched Queerly Beloved, and we are so glad to have welcomed this wonderful, diverse group of neighbors into our safe and generative space. Networking with our other 36 or so partners, we have extended care for the marginalized and housing insecure, creating dignifying connections with and being in relationships with inherently worthy beloveds suffering the oppression of impoverishment. And this afternoon, we inaugurate foster family circles here at CVUUS, welcoming caregivers and youth whose need for a space to connect and share has often been overlooked. If you have experience as a foster kinship or adoptive caregiver, and especially if you have experience as a foster adoptive youth, please do feel free to be part of that circle with other community members today. These actions are all part of the CVUUS story. While they may not have received enough attention or publicity in the face of other news and events, they are expressions of a love-centric set of values and progress and expanding relationships. This story continues as CVUUS co-creates and chooses its future. Our Roots and Wings capital campaign is starting soon, giving CVUUS yet another opportunity to express and invest in Unitarian Universalist values as a sanctuary people. As this reading this morning from Blue said, this faith, Unitarian Universalism, calls us to the kind of transformation that the work of faith demands. Next slide. So I would like to conclude by reading the purpose statement that the CVUUS Board of Trustees voted to co-create the new congregational space that is our social justice ministry. CVUUS affirms that collective social justice action is integral to the tradition of our Unitarian Universalist faith and necessary for demonstrating our values in community. As part of CVUUS, our social justice ministry will serve by centering the needs of the oppressed and marginalized, orchestrating social justice planning and actions, and creating opportunities for CVUUS to put our faith into action in and beyond the walls of our congregation. May it be so. Now please rise in body or spirit as we sing "We Would Be One," hymn number 318 in your hymnal. As we extinguish the chalice, as the CVUUS story continues, as we would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points our way, may we be transformed as we are transformers, always united in love. Please read these words with me. We extinguish this flame, remembering always to be love.
A song of hope, a song of commitment. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.